Are the Buckeyes back to form, or is Nebraska just that bad? Mark Rogers TV with instant analysis. Ohio State 62, Nebraska 3. Who saw that coming? Many saw an Ohio State blowout. The odds makers said 17 and a half. I said 30 to 17, 62 to 3. Ohio State with 31 in the first half, 31 in the second half. Really, Nebraska, the only reason they scored is they got a ricochet pass that went for about 45 yards that set them up down to the Ohio State 30-yard line. And then they did finish off the drive to a certain extent, got the field goal, but Ohio State's red zone defense, the second best in the nation, just giving up 33% touchdowns in the red zone, even better. After Nebraska gets into the red zone a couple times and the Buckeyes shut them out of the end zone. Okay, is Ohio State healthy on offense? Well, the two issues that we've talked about multiple times in different ways following different efforts since the Oklahoma game, in which the Buckeyes just looked like they were firing on all cylinders. And since then, it's been difficulty against the likes of Penn State and Northwestern, Wisconsin for 3 quarters. The Buckeyes' offensive line has not been dominant. They showed us something in this game against a Nebraska defense that played very well against Corey Clement in Wisconsin last week in holding the Badgers to 17 points in regulation. So the offensive line making some improvements. Of course, Urban Meyer, that was his point of emphasis going into the Northwestern game after the shocker in Happy Valley. Not as much of a shocker considering what Penn State's done the last couple of weeks since defeating the number two, at the time, number two Buckeyes. Okay, the second thing is the passing game downfield. The quarterback not being in sync with wide receivers, the wide receivers not blowing the top off the defense and not separating from defensive backs. I don't know that that's been completely settled because I think Curtis Samuel is the guy. He's been the guy since day one, and Ohio State showed us against Oklahoma, Noah Brown in particular, that we thought they had playmakers just replacing the likes of Jalen Marshall and the wide receivers that they lost last year. Well, not so much because it's still Curtis Marshall gaining 137 yards receiving on 8 receptions with a couple touchdowns. He had 41 in the rushing game. He came into the game at 9.5 yards per touch as the number one offensive threat per carry per touch in FBS football. Curtis Samuel, I don't know why he doesn't get some Heisman hype. I know Lamar Jackson has pretty much sealed that thing. But Curtis Samuel should get some top 5 consideration. That aside, we're talking football and talking championships for Nebraska. Shut it down. That's it. Wisconsin is a far superior team. They've shown it against the likes of the resume that they faced in LSU, Ohio State, and Michigan, even though Nebraska played them awfully well at Madison. That was one of our concerns, if you checked out our preview, is that Nebraska gave us its best effort against a quality team that we've seen in a few years. Could they do it 2 weeks in a row? Well, that was a resounding no. Tommy Armstrong was lost, fortunately, in terms of the health of the young man after he's carted off the field, after he came down on his head out of bounds during running play in the first quarter. We saw him come back in the second quarter, so it wasn't long at the hospital that Tommy Armstrong did return to the field, was running, looked good, looked healthy, and that's great to see. But Tommy Armstrong wasn't going to win this game. Tommy Armstrong wasn't going to even challenge Ohio State. He was 4 of 15 at the time, and he is not the answer for this team. Of course, he's got to be the guy and has been the guy for 4 years, and he's going to finish out his senior season. And for Nebraska, considering the 7-0 start, will probably finish out this season in pretty good shape, but not championship shape. Wisconsin's the class of the West. We saw that earlier against Northwestern. We saw that last week. They just have been plagued by having the more difficult non-division schedule and having to face Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State. That aside, the Ohio State passing game, I got to see it again and again and again. Glimpses of it this week. We saw where the talent differential between these two squads is significant. It's not monumental. Nebraska has top 30 talent. Ohio State has top 3 talent. And it resulted in 62-3. Ohio State offensively, 352 passing, 238 rushing for 590 yards total. And Nebraska gained 204 yards, 34-9 in first downs. It was just a complete bludgeoning by the Buckeyes. Okay, Ohio State's got the likes of Maryland, Michigan State, and Michigan. Of course, the showdown with Michigan looms large. It is huge. Maybe Penn State gets into the mix depending on the situation there. We know that if Penn State and Ohio State finish in a tie, two-way tie, it goes to Penn State from head-to-head. If Ohio State can finish it out and Michigan does not lose going into Columbus, then the Buckeyes are in good shape to run the table and get to the Big Ten championship game and a possible rematch with, we expect, the Wisconsin Badgers. Nebraska fans, still a good season, the type of season you expected, not to beat a Wisconsin, not to beat Ohio State. Iowa's going to be difficult. Minnesota's playing well. Nebraska should finish, let's say, 9-3 with a slip-up. Maybe they get to 10-2 and a nice New Year's Day bowl game. Ohio State, the championship, still in sight. Let's talk it up right here on Mark Rogers TV.